And just seeing Donald Trump has been sworn in for a second term as President of the United States of America just a few minutes ago in Washington, D.C. Now, Trump uses his inaugural address to retract some of his grievances against his political opponent and said he will liberate the country from a radical and corrupt establishment. A lot of concern
Raise your right hand and repeat after
just
me.
when he took all
I,
the
Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
And that is Donald Trump, of course, just taking it over office. A lot of concern, and many persons are just expect a lot of anticipation about some of the policies. He said from day one, I'm going to hit the ground running, just as we had in Nigeria from President Tinubu. And now Trump is moving to fulfill some of his campaign promises, a lot of immigration policies, and all of those concerns generally. And tonight on the show, we will be extracting some of this concern as well. Also coming back home to look at how far Nigeria, the way forward for our country, the expectations from the people, and how we can continue to get democracy working in Nigeria. Some untold stories and some concerns that haven't really been raised, and how we can continue to queue behind the rest of the developed countries to get our country and our nation working. Tonight, I'm being joined all the way from the United States of America, joining us tonight to give us some perspective to this issue by global affairs analyst Gloria Ayo. Joins us live from Atlanta, United States of America tonight on the show. Thanks so much, Gloria, for sparing some of your evening with us from U.S. Quickly, just give us the feelings of how it really feels like just Donald Trump assuming office again the second time. Some said historic comeback. Some said, I mean, this is a man that is coming to finish his job. What is the feelings like within the country?
Tell you, it doesn't matter if you support Trump. It doesn't matter if you're against Trump. The bottom line is that most Americans wanted Trump. And that was proven at the election of 2024. So today, it feels like people are celebrating. And even if you're not a supporter of Trump, you have to celebrate the fact that the democracy works, right? So that's what I think largely people are celebrating. And yes, you talked about some of the reforms. That is incredible. In that whatever it is he said he would do, hopefully he sticks to his word. Again, this isn't me trying to prove whether or not I support Trump, but we have to look at things as they are. The election was credible. A lot of supporters of Trump are screaming everywhere. A lot of people have gone to kiss the ring. Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, different countries. Did you know that the TikTok owner is actually at the inauguration? What does that tell you? There's a controversy with TikTok right now in America, but they're there. They're at the inauguration. What does that tell you? So even with the warning that TikTok gave, or the disclaimer that TikTok gave to US citizens about not being able to access TikTok or CapCut, ByteDance gave that disclaimer. They put the caveat there that, the US that people should not be alarmed. Basically, the US is going to work on it. What does that tell you? A lot of things are going to happen with Trump coming in. So we can only keep our fingers crossed. But the bigger story here is that the democracy worked, and that's how it should be. In 2016, when Trump came into power, that was reflective of what Americans wanted, regardless of how controversial it was. In 2020, Americans said, we don't want you anymore. They kicked him out. There was an election that happened. The people brought in who they wanted, which was Biden. 2024 came, they said, we're tired of Biden. We don't want Biden anymore. We want Trump. And now Trump is back in office. That is what happens in a democracy. That's how it should be.
All right. It'd be to make some concern regards to technology. You've also seen a move by where some government are kind of not really being responsive to the usage of digital technology and platforms. As some said, X contributed a lot to his comeback, for his election by Elon Musk and the contribution of all of those aspects. With the aspect in Africa, coming back to Nigeria, and you can also look at Kenya recently, issues of X and government and Nigeria as well. There has been this back and forth between developing nations like us and also seeing what the world is accepting. How do we manage this emerging weapon? Well, some said it looks like it's now becoming a political tool as well.
Right. So the one thing we cannot deny, and it's not just in Nigeria, it's not just throughout Africa, globally, the youth are better informed. Barring any misinformation, disinformation, or even malinformation, these things are inevitable. They will come, right? But we are in a digital age, right? One would expect that political processes should be improved. And it isn't because we're not equipped enough. It's because, frankly, we lack the political will. Now, to those who say that, let me bring it to Nigeria very quickly. To those who say that voters are not on social media, the idea that most Nigerians are not online, so social media voices don't count, is actually a reductive argument, because what it does is that it dismisses the impact that digital platforms have on shaping public opinion. We cannot deny what Elon Musk through X did for Trump. We can't deny that. Look at what that did to the Tesla stock. That's just how powerful social media is. And it lets you know, you think retrospectively, wow. So when Elon bought X, he knew that was because, at first it was like, wow, this is a lot of money you're losing. But look at him, he's winning big right now because he's able to help shape public opinion, which some would argue actually helped bring Trump back in power. So social media does influence political discussions, and it does amplify civic participation. So those online do represent a diverse group of people, and it also serves as a bridge to help amplify issues that affect those who are offline. And I hate to digress quickly, but protests like NSARS, it started online. The momentum started online, but it had to do with offline grievances that Nigerians felt throughout Nigeria. So social media is a megaphone for the voiceless. And what's being discussed online often spills into these conversations, which end up creating a ripple effect. So the so-called noise online is not detached from reality. Citizens are better able to monitor elections now. They're able to see things as they're happening in real time. Digital technology has leveled the playing field by giving ordinary citizens access to information that previously only, no disrespect to your TV station, only traditional media had access to. And what I believe is that our leaders should also take advantage of this. See this as a tool that can help, not hurt governance. Conversations on social media should influence policymaking. Politicians should monitor social media. You shouldn't gag people from speaking up, because this way you're able to gauge public sentiment. You're able to adjust your strategies. So let's not dismiss social media voices, because if you do that, you're going to end up alienating a populace that is actually, you can't help it, they're actually more politically aware.
Now, a lot of concerns about the national unity. If you look at the U.S., you can give us an understanding about what it means if the people are more divided after the election, and now if Trump has a whole lot of work to do. Coming back home, sometimes that clamor gets national unity. We are together. Let the unity strive in Nigeria, in Africa. What would you say maybe the pathway in getting this defined? Because for some persons, what others means by national unity is different from these other main regions. How do we get to have a defined national unity? Because it looks at after election, post-elections are always getting the country divided, diverse of opinions based on the parties and all of that.
Yeah, and sadly, it didn't just start. And this isn't to minimize the gravity of what happened in 2023. Our electoral process has been marred since 1959, and the closest we have come to what would be free and fair would maybe be the 1993 presidential election, which brought MKO Abiola in, even though that sadly was annulled. Nigeria has had a history, unfortunately, of being divided. And what that does, the electoral process is only a reflection of that, because we're so divided, but that plays out a lot when it even comes to us choosing the people that should govern us. The colonial era shaped Nigeria's political systems. Whether or not we can say we don't want to talk about what the British did, let's focus on us, but history is so important. Under British rule, the system of indirect governance was relying on local chiefs, and this led to ethnic divisions and unequal power structures. Then you talk about the amalgamation of northern and southern Nigeria in 1914, which was done for administrative convenience. But what it did was that it created a fragmented foundation that's still influencing our politics today. So ethnic and regional tensions, some religious, unfortunately, have risen from the artificial unification, and that's affecting us politically. You know, we have struggles over resource allocation. We have struggles over representation. Nigeria's early post-independence years had a lot of political instability. And it's because of this colonial style divide and rule that's still shaping, unfortunately, our politics. After independence in 1960, the First Republic adopted a parliamentary system which was modeled after the British. However, we all know about the ethnic rivalries, we know about the regional tensions that have undermined our political process, even leading to military coups in 1966. What these coups have done also, these coups have also established a pattern of military interference in our political system. And this has disrupted our growth as far as our democracy is concerned. When you have centralized powers, those things still affect our governance today. So that military rule, which dominated Nigeria for nearly 3 decades, has created this culture of authoritarianism and, again, centralized power. And even in our current democratic era, many elements of military-style governance, if you really think about it, they're still showing. You have this style of top-down decision-making. You have what looks like a lack of accountability. And the military regimes, what they did was they sidelined institutions like the judiciary, the legislature, and created this legacy of weak checks and balances. So the scars of the past, the ethnic tensions, the corruption, the centralized power are still challenging us today and preventing us from being able to build what should be a fully functional democracy.
I mean, a lot of expectation coming back home because in all of this, we are trying to tell down the message back home here in Nigeria to see how we can get it to work. We've seen our Kemi, the leader from the UK, has also been a lot of having some back forth with Nigeria government, criticizing the government and undermining the progress we have. Some would say Nigeria is a work in progress. I mean, we are getting it right, gradually by gradual. While some would say it looks that things haven't really gotten better. A government comes in, go without really leaving footprints. What would be your concern about the current state of Nigeria? Because Shettima, the vice president, actually disagreed with what Kemi had raised. You know, Kemi Benedok had raised against about describing Nigeria in that form. One would say, what are the work being done at home? What are the sense of the development? What would you say are Nigeria really pictured, you know, in the global community before one comes to the issues of economy?
So Kemi's style is a very interesting one. She's obviously an extremist as far as the political style. I guess she would be like the version of Donald Trump in the UK, right? Donald Trump in the US is like the Kemi of the UK. So they tend to be extreme. Some people buy that, some people don't. So there will always be controversy, or rather there will always be controversial responses to their styles. But focusing on Nigeria very quickly. So Nigeria is unfortunately a paradox, right? Because we have immense potential. Nigeria is rich in culture. We have the resources. We definitely have the talent, but Nigeria is struggling under the weight of systemic issues. That's all it boils down to. Our progress has been stifled by insecurity, by corruption. We've had economic instability, you know, things that frankly could be avoided if we had these systemic issues taken care of. But the good thing is it's not all bad news. We know our entertainers in the music and movie industry, they keep making their marks globally. We have a growing tech ecosystem. There is also unprecedented youth activism, like we've never seen before. Social media has helped amplify these voices, but it's also made more people aware. So the youth activism keeps growing. And I see hope, you know, in the resilience of Nigerians. But the challenge lies in turning this resilience into structured reform, and that's going to require visionary leadership and accountability.
A lot of persons have also have issues concerning the economy. Sometimes, IMF, International Monetary Fund, will also give some advices to countries, third world countries like that of Nigeria and many other African countries. Some said we should start looking and seeking for homegrown economy solutions, like the issues of fuel subsidy removal was really advised also by IMF. Some are really having a concern with that because that has really plunged Nigerians into some untold hardship. The inflation, rise of inflation, and some of the policies that have been taken by this government. This government said, on the other hand, that these reforms are necessary for us to get to where we should be, as a country. What would you really have as a concern in regards to some of these economic reforms made by the government, rather being advised or also by their own thought?
So IMF loans come with conditions. You have currency devaluation, you have subsidy removal, and other austerity measures. Now, these policies may seem to stabilize the economy temporarily, but what they end up doing is increasing inflation. They help or they worsen or reduce purchasing power, which translates to hardship for everyday citizens. For instance, Nigeria's experience with subsidy removal has historically resulted in spikes in transportation and food costs, which ends up affecting the poor. So our economic policies must reflect the unique realities of Nigerians. So we have issues like high unemployment. We have a youthful population. We have a need for infrastructure development. IMF advice tends to be tailored for generalized global scenarios and does not always align with Nigeria's specific needs. So instead of externally driven policies, Nigeria should focus on developing things like agriculture. Agriculture is a sector with the potential to create millions of jobs. We need to expand our manufacturing. We need to cut wasteful spending so that we can free up resources for development. So external advice is not inherently bad, but it needs to be balanced. Nigeria should engage with international institutions, but only selectively. And they should use these institutions to supplement, not dictate how we should run our country economically.
And I'm coming back to U.S. The president, Donald Trump, has really had a lot of concerns against some of his immigration-related policies. From looking at his campaign, just from the 2024 campaign as well, he is really having a concern, blaming migrants for some of the problems that is being faced by U.S. He has used words like deportation and all of that. Do you feel this really is targeting, for instance, the blacks, or what do you make out of all of these policies from his immigration policy?
To be honest with you, Frank is the man who, like I said earlier, will go extreme with, he says things that people love to hear and people get so impassioned and they're ready to fight. And which is why it's surprising that the election was as peaceful as it was. Thank God for that. But those things he said, some people would say, during elections, people obviously, they promise you the world, even if they only end up giving you maybe a small house or something. But a lot of those rhetorics I guess that's his style. He has to put that out. But I don't think people should be largely worried. I do get the crackdown on immigration. I get that, or should I say illegal immigration. And while a lot of people are panicking, in 2016, he was the president from 2016 and he lost in 2020. But during that period, from what I heard, the immigration process was not exactly too hard or too stringent. So I think he talks the talk, but it's not that he's not going to crack down on it. But I think it's those who are perhaps, unfortunately, illegal immigrants that might have things to worry about.
All right. How do you describe that election? Because in Nigeria back home, INEC are really clamoring for more funding for better elections. But some are judging the previous elections we've had not to really be matching to the standard, our expectation.
Yes. Before I get to the U.S. Election, permit me to talk about, you referenced Nigerian election. Unfortunately, for the very first time, maybe the only time in Nigerian history, Nigeria had a sitting president in 2007, recognized the flaws in the electoral process that led to their own ascent. This was Musa Yar'Adua. And we have to commend that. Now, some would argue that he should have taking the next step of not even taking the position and should have insisted on a rerun, but at least it was transparent enough to admit it. Speaking of reruns, just last year, Romania had to schedule a rerun of its presidential election due to concerns about Russia's interference during the first vote. Even though reports are suggesting that there is still a chance that the outcome may remain unchanged in the second attempt, at least there's going to be a rerun. So the hope is that they do the right thing in favor of the people. Unlike a place like Venezuela, where there's a lot of chaos right now because Nicolas Maduro decided to go against the people's will and run for a third term. He's now president for a third term. And bringing it home to Africa. Mozambique. It's so heartbreaking. It's not just an embarrassment to the continent, but it's an embarrassment globally. What happened in Mozambique? People died in that election. Algeria was also chaotic. And as much as I like Rwanda's presidential election process because it was calm, Kagame winning 99% of the vote has raised concerns. I mean, there were also questions, even before the election, around the erosion of political liberties and the lack of genuine political competition. That was scary to see. But somehow he won 99% of the votes. But we have had some good examples throughout the continent. Look at what happened in Ghana. Look at what happened in Senegal, Botswana last year. The world, not just Africa, celebrated the transparency and peaceful conduct. So these countries have become examples of a stable democracy, not just within Africa, but outside. South Africa too. The ANC lost its majority for the first time since 1994, which led to a coalition government. And despite this political shift, the elections were conducted without major incidents. I'm only citing these examples to explain that I don't have to be a citizen of these countries to know which elections are credible and which ones aren't. One does not have to be Nigerian to admit, for instance, that what happened, because you talked about INEC, what happened in 2023 was not a good look for democracy. People who say, oh, no election is perfect, they are right to an extent, but as it relates to Nigeria's elections, that could be a dismissive thing to say. Our electoral process needs an overhaul. It isn't about putting policies and tools in place or needing more money. It is about ensuring that the people behind these policies and these tools, people managing these funds that are being received for elections, do the right thing in the interest of the hundreds of millions of people in Nigeria, and not just in the interest of a couple of people in power. And back to Trump, who is a great case study. Like I said, the people wanted him in 2016. They didn't want him in 2020. Now they want him again. The world is celebrating his inauguration. Whether or not you're a huge Trump fan, you cannot deny that this election was peaceful and flawless. The environment was calm. As alarmingly impassioned as people seemed, it was very peaceful. So we cannot debate that. So our elections need to evolve to reflect not just democracy in name, but democracy in substance, where citizens are able to trust the process and the outcomes.
I mean, we just have the concern of confirmation of news coming in that protesters are marching towards the White House, waving banners and denouncing the incoming administration's policies. Again, sorry for still taking you back, because I'm trying to get also the opinions of those who feel some of these policies are not in any way in tandem with what America should be. Do you feel that you have those who have those kind of feelings as well, away from the political opinions?
And that's really unfortunate what you're describing with the protesting. I mean, you don't have to like Trump to respect the democracy. He won by a wide margin. I personally don't believe that people should be scared. I think there are a lot of scare tactics for Trump. I'm going to just say it.
Those that will take us back to the protest. I think January 7th, that's about.
6.
I mean,
you come again?
Slightly also look at those that the supporters of Trump also staged a protest.
Are you talking about the January 6th insurrection?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Unfortunately, that's what happened, but there were systems in place that was able to curb that. So it didn't get out of hand beyond what it did. That was also very unfortunate. So whether or not you're protesting for or protesting against, let the democracy speak and leave it alone. As long as the process was seamless, as long as it was flawless, there's no perfect election, unfortunately, or so people would say, but this election was as flawless as it could be, and people just need to accept it and move on. You will have another chance in the next election. As long as people are not screaming about how unfair it was, we can leave it alone. Trump won the election, and it's okay. Let him do his thing for 4 years. It's fine. It's just 4 years.
All right. I mean, looking at back to home, 26 years of democracy. This year will make us 26 years of unbroken practicing democracy. In all of that, we are still having concern, rule of law, and all of those aspects that enhance, a democratic government, a democratic rule. Some are really having a concern about what we inherited, what we accepted to practice. Is that really democracy? Some who said many African countries are also, having to embrace military rule once again. We've also seen what's happening within some of the countries within our West Africa and ECOWAS region as well. How do we get to, yes, democracy might has all of those good intentions, but if it's not well implemented and if it doesn't get to put to work, people might not feel the essence of it. What will be your call? What will be your concern for African leaders, this time not just Nigeria, in a bid to let developed countries practicing these democracy?
Yes, throughout Africa, we need institutional reforms. We need our anti-corruption agencies to actually work. The judiciary, in Nigeria, specifically INEC, these institutions need to be free from partisan control. So this way they're not acting they're not, favoring one side. They have to act impartially. Digital tools also need to be automated in order to help reduce human involvement in public fund management, for instance. We have to digitize tax collection. We have to digitize government payments. We have to digitize our electoral process and let it work. We have beavers, but beavers needs to be allowed to work. I hate to sound like the prophet of doom, but if we continue what we're doing, the way we've been doing it, not much may change during the next election. We have to start allowing, we're in the age of technology. 2025 is the fourth there's a revolution, a digital revolution. We have to allow these systems work. And that would be the first step. Democracy, see, at the end of the day, power is wonderful, it's beautiful. We all, a lot of people want power. But the minute we're able to put self aside and focus on what is great for our country, by extension, our continent, we will see Africa move, because Africa is already self-sufficient. Africa has everything it takes. So all we need to do now is to have these institutional reforms, ensure that things work properly, and citizens should be empowered. They should not be gagged, because throughout the continent, you see where citizens are being gagged. So this way, accountability can be demanded. You can have platforms for whistleblowing and transparent governance.
Thank you so much, Gloria Heyo, Global Affairs handler tonight, and sharing some of those insights. Thank you so much, and we'll have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
And I will turn attention back home as the federal government has made some reply considering the acceptance of our invitation to join the Intergovernmental Organization, BRICS, as a partner country. A lot of persons said, what will be the decision? What inspired the decision by government? What is the effort to foster international collaboration as well? Would BRICS answer all of that? Or recall that BRICS has Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Indonesia, and the United Arab Emirates. We'll be having tonight on the show about a professor of international relations to express some of this concern, not just actions. What is the commitment? What is the motive behind joining these organizations and these groups? What would be a way forward for leveraging economic opportunities and advancing some strategic concern for development of Nigeria? Do stay with us on the show after the short break. My guest will be here.